Book one is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's helping people tap into their creative side so they can write the script for the next act of their life. No other than Mr. James Walters.
Hey, Daniel. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Welcome, Mr. James, on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Oh, sure. I have always been in the visual arts, and that's how I made my career as a photographer, telling other people's stories. And I've loved to do that for the last 3 decades. And it was about a decade ago that I decided to start telling my own story through writing. And I wrote a first book. It was kind of like a memoir about my career up to that point. And in the past, so that was a fun experience. As a photographer, I'd never created a book that was a picture book. So I spent between 2020 and 2025 doing that. It came out last year, and that was a lot of fun because I was able to write a little more creatively, and because it didn't have to be factual, it could be anything, and I was able to illustrate it with photographs. So that was a ton of fun. But now I find myself at the intersection in my career between writing and filmmaking, and photography's right in the middle. So doing a lot of different creative things now.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. James. Thank you. And today, let's talk about why it really means to author your own life.
Yeah.
Interesting topic. You speak about the moment people realize they're following the scripts written by others, parents, teachers, society, and discover something essential is missing. What is specific line in your script that you finally realize you had written yourself?
Oh, the great thing about what I've been doing for so long, telling other people's stories through photography, is I get to kind of dip into their life for sometimes it's just a few minutes, sometimes it's a day or more. If I'm working with executives at a company, I can go in, see the culture, see what's going on there. If it's a social function, I can see the behind the scenes of the dynamics of the different members of that family. And I am out photographing and talk to people a lot, and different themes keep coming up, especially when I'm at book signings and someone looks at my book, starts looking through it and said, "Oh, this is really kind of interesting." I've And then the next thing they say quite often is something to the effect of, "I would love to write a book. I've got this story. I want to, get it out there." And then they say the word "but," and then they give me an even longer explanation of all the reasons they haven't done it, don't think they could do it. And I noticed this pattern of people kind of holding themselves back. And a lot of it centered around the fact that we all grow up as kids and we're told the things that we should do in order to be successful in life. We should graduate maybe high school, then we should maybe go to college, then get a job, then get a family, then get a house, and all of these things that we're told either by our family, or if it's a church you're affiliated with, or even when you do get into school, your school has a certain culture that tells you certain things. I just noticed the pattern of people allowing those messages from decades before in their childhood to kind of inform the things they thought were important. And when they did all of those things, they worked hard. They looked around and they thought to themselves, "Gosh, I've done everything I was supposed to do, but I'm not really happy." And that's when I realized that those folks weren't writing their own story. They gave someone the pen long ago, and they're hoping that person could write their story. They're acting it out. They're just not writing they're not giving themselves the best lines, I guess is the best way to put it.
Indeed, you describe a joyful rebellion as reclaiming authorship of your life. Why joyful and why rebellion? What makes shift both liberating and confrontational at the same time?
Yeah, that when I first and I started a podcast to with that name because podcasting is a lot like taking pictures. You get to dip into someone's story for just a little while, except instead of something visual, it's something that people can listen to. And I enjoyed that different medium. And when I came up with the name for it, it was just based on all of the conversation that I had with people who they wanted joy in their life and they'd worked really hard. They'd done all of those things they thought were checking off the boxes to create success. And the thing no one ever told them is that success doesn't always bring happiness or joy. So a lot of these folks were searching for joy, but what that required was that they had to rebel and go against a lot of the things that they'd grown up believing, a lot of the ways of living that they thought were the goal, but they turned out to be stifling them. And they just didn't realize that until much later in life. So that's where the joyful rebellion comes in because sometimes you do have to rebel against advice your parents gave you or advice your school gave you, advice that you thought for so long to be true. And if it falls apart in your life and to go against that is where you find the joy, then that's really liberating for people.
Indeed, beautifully articulated. Mr. James, you've said that awareness is the essential first step to meaningful change. What do you do when someone has the awareness that they're not living their own story but is terrified to pick it up then?
Oh, that's a great question. I just did an interview just a day or two ago where we were talking about that very thing about how some folks are comforted even though they're in a bad situation, whether it's their job, their relationship, whatever it might be. They are afraid to leave because they don't know what's going to happen. They're not happy with the situation, but they know they can predict the outcome, even though they're not happy with it. So that tends to create some stagnation. And the awareness piece is sometimes the thing that's necessary to even see that there's a problem in the first place. I mean, that's the first step. If you don't know there's a problem, there's nothing to fix yet. And the thing about people though, I mean, I'm guilty of this just as much as anyone. It's not always a situation where someone else could bring that awareness to you. Someone could say, "Oh, you're uh seems like your grades could be better or it seems like you could be trying harder or whatever it is," but that's not going to motivate you to do anything. Sometimes it might make you defensive. And someone giving you those observations about yourself can be useful, but I find with a lot of the people I talk to, it's that self-awareness, it's that reflection of, "Hey, what's not going on in my life that is going the way I want to?" And then start reflecting on why is that? And then it usually comes back to something you're responsible for yourself. And once you realize and have that awareness that it's something you can move on, that's when you get the confidence to make the move.
Yes, indeed, make the move, people. Make the move. Your mantra is deceptively simple. Nothing changes if nothing changes. What is the smallest change someone can make today that signals to themselves and world that they can are now the other?
Oh, that's a great one. I love that because it is it's simple and so many things that I talk about with people are simple, they're not necessarily easy. So if there was a simple thing that someone needed to push something forward in their life, I say do the easiest thing. If that's sending an email to someone to make an introduction, if say you're looking for a different job, maybe send one message to a person in your circle and say, "Hey, would you introduce me to someone else?" It might not be the person who's actually has a job available, but it's someone who could give you perspective on maybe a different company or a different avenue for you. But then if it's something where you need to grow, you have growth, maybe just go to the library, get that one book, read a page out of it, see if it interests you, or reach out to someone you haven't talked to in a while. I find when I go out and I engage with people and I get conversations going, it's not very long before I have an email or a phone call that also with it has an opportunity attached. And I don't think that's by accident. I'm a curious person. I love to help other people. And I think they can see that. And so when we start interacting, maybe their mind goes off in the direction of ways that I can help them get to their goals and they can help me get to mine. So sometimes just sending a DM is something that can get a ball rolling that you had no idea where it's going to take you.
Interesting indeed, Mr. James. You emphasize the importance of not letting your work define you entirely. For
Mm.
entrepreneurs and leaders who have built their identities around their companies, how do they even begin to separate who they are when they build?
That is something that's a work in progress for me, but
Hmm.
it goes back to that awareness because I learned this one the hard way. And I spent a good portion of my career in a partnership with a business partnership with someone, and we were kind of like a great team, and that's what we were known for. And we were producing great photographs, and we were the go-to people to call if you needed something done and something that would wow people. And after, I don't know, 12 years of that partnership, the partnership fell away. It wasn't viable anymore. And it took me a while to figure out, okay, well, who am I now? Am I just me, photographer? Like how do I tell people what I do at this point? I had to really regroup and rebrand because I'd made the mistake of tying up my identity. And people ask, "Oh, what do you do?" "Well, I'm a photographer." Well, no, I'm a lot of different things. And that's just the thing I spend most of my time doing. But as I got a little older, a little more mature, I realized, okay, I'm a lot more than just my job. So I need to figure out how do I relate to the world. And when people say, "What do you do?" Now I tell them I tell stories. And they look at me strange. And if it seems like it would be a fun conversation to continue, then I'll continue it. But sometimes I just say I tell stories and they look at me strange and we part ways, and that's okay too.
Indeed, yes, indeed. So, Mr. James, you went on vacation and ended up editing 15,000 photos because you cannot fully relax. How do you
Yeah.
counsel a achiever who built their success on that relentless drive, but now you find the same drive stealing their peace?
Yeah. I've learned some lessons the hard way. One of them is the grind. And when I was in the middle, I guess, of my career at this point, the grind was real. I mean, working from sun up to sun, way past sundown, and working into the wee hours of the morning, just making all the photos perfect. It turned out to be a little bit of perfectionism, but it also turned out to be a mechanism to just numb out the rest of the world. I had a lot of stress and things going on at one point in my life, and I would just use work as an excuse because very few people give you a hard time if you're saying you're going to work more. It's just not a thing, at least in American culture. If you're like, yeah, I'm going to work extra, they're like, yeah, go you. And I realized that, the people who count on me, like kids, family, friends, it's it's cool if I'm at work, but if I'm always at work and they don't get any access to me, it's like, what's the point for them? So I did have to. I learned a valuable lesson. I got on a cruise boat right after a huge job. I had 15,000 photos to edit. I went there to hang out with my kids. But the thing, my kids are teenagers, so the thing is, like, they would nap half of the day, and they they would go do their thing, and while they were, I would spend an hour here, an hour there on the laptop because I was like, "Okay, the ocean's beautiful, but it looks exactly the same as it did, an hour ago." So I just sit there looking at the ocean, editing some pictures, and what I realized is I got like all of it done by the time I left, and I still had a vacation. I spent good time with my kids, and I was like, "What in the world was that all about?" And I realized on a situation. I'd never been on a cruise before, but you don't have to think about anything. You don't have to think about what you're going to eat. You have to decide when you're going to eat, but pretty much the food is there. You don't have to go looking for it too much. And that was it. I realized that when I'm at my busiest, I have to set up my life so I don't have any decisions to make. So when I do get super busy, you'll see me wear basically the same outfit. The t-shirts are clean, but we're pulling the exact same thing every day, throw a jacket over it, go to work. I'm eating basically the same food every day. And again, this is when I'm super busy. I just get my life to a point where I don't have to think very much. And that does free me up to actually have some joy in my life when I'm not working.
Good for you, Mr. James. You've navigated multiple roles: photographer, entrepreneur, podcaster, father, which is identity, chef. What's the most disorienting, and how did you ground yourself through it?
Oh, yeah. I think the author, I don't identify as an author because there is still, just to be completely transparent with people, there's still that um, imposter syndrome part of it. I've written 3 books now, but I mean, it's not how I spend all of my time. So when people say, "Oh yeah, he's an author too," I'm like, "Oh, okay. If you say so, it's cool." So there's that imposter syndrome. The thing that I've really jumped into is the podcasting because it is very much the same workflow as a photo shoot. You go in with a photo shoot, you meet someone, you record your time together, and usually that's to tell their story. And then I come back, I take those recordings, which are photos, through an editing process, and then I deliver them to the company or to that individual or to the world, whatever the assignment is. Podcasting is just the same. I love to sit down with someone, talk about their story, and the the point of it's a little different. My point of talking about their story is so that others might benefit. That's not always the case with a photo shoot, but the process is the same. After I record that interview, I come in, I'll do some editing, and then I distribute it to the world for people to enjoy. But that was a really comfortable transition. But the author transition is going to take some time for me to grow into those shoes.
Well, good luck for that, Mr. James. You've spoken about psychological challenges entrepreneurs face. What is the question entrepreneurs stop asking themselves when they start treating their business as an extension of their ego rather than creative endeavor?
Oh, yeah. This is a lesson. Well, really so many of the things that I work with people on are things that I've been working on, and I meet people who are going down that same path. It might be the a different circumstance than I've been in, but some of the behind the scenes stuff is the same. So when an entrepreneur really gets moving and they understand that the thing their business will live and die by are the systems in the business, some of the creative people like me will look at that and say, okay, systems, that doesn't sound very creative. And I'm like, dude, you have no idea. No, let's sit down, let's talk. Because I used to think that way too. I used to think, oh, that sounds really businessy and make a system. That sounds cookie cutter. I don't want cookie cutter because I'm a creative. That's what I thought. And it turns out if I make systems, if I make certain parts of my business cookie cutter, like the billing, like the communication my clients get, it increases trust because on the boring stuff like communication and billing, they know what to expect. There's a trust level there. It's not different all the time. But when it comes to the real things I produce, which are my photo results, podcast edits, that kind of thing, it's important that those are in my style, but they also reflect the creativity that both my client and I come together to create. So, eh, figuring out where to draw the line, I think for entrepreneurs is difficult because everyone's on a little different spectrum between creativity and tactics and systems. And it's interesting that in this world right now, as dynamic as it is, there are still people I meet who haven't figured out. You don't have to have a balance, but you do have to be able to pull from both sides of that being a business owner kind of thing.
Very well said, Mr. James. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence you, Johnny?
Oh man, this, the one book, and I read it every couple of years because it's just I go long enough to think to myself, did all that stuff really happen? And then I have to go back and read. And the book is called Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. And it was written a little while ago, about 20, no, about 32 years ago, maybe at this point. It was written back in 94. And it is based on a true story. It happens in Savannah, Georgia. And the time period when it happens is actually the early 1980s. But it's about this eccentric antique dealer. And it's about all of these incredibly eccentric people who live in the town of Savannah, Georgia, and just their quirks and where they go, what they do. And somehow they all get kind of entangled with each other without knowing it. But there's a court trial, there's a big crime that happens, it shocks the city, and I won't give the ending away, but it is a wild ride from absolute beginning until the end. And there are a lot of things you just don't see coming. And when you keep thinking to yourself, wait, this is really based off of a true story, it makes the book so much more interesting.
Thank you for that recommended book, Mr. James. And what will be your piece of advice for those people that want to be like you?
Oh, wow. Uh, I think the biggest piece of advice we talked about a few minutes ago is nothing changes if nothing changes. And that's something I have to repeat to myself. Sometimes I put it in my journal and it reminds me to keep moving forward. Tiny little changes can be really powerful and they can build over time if you're intentional about it. And just remembering that nothing changes, if nothing changes, can bring about the change you might want to see in your own life.
Give for that inspiring advice. Mr. James, your concept of making certain aspect of life intentionally boring to free mental energy for creativity is provocative. What is the one thing in your life you made boring that created the most space?
Oh, this is going to be bizarre, but well, it's not bizarre. I think a lot of people have heard other folks do this. And I did make my clothing really boring. T-shirts. We're talking jeans. You'll see me in jeans, t-shirts, and I do have like 3 pairs of shoes, but really everything else looks like a uniform. And this is not anything new, but it does work. I pull out the same thing from the closet every day. I only have one kind of load of laundry to do because it's all black and blue jeans. And so I can mix it all up. It makes my life easy, but it decreases the amount of decisions I have to make. And some people call that, decision fatigue. They say, oh, well, yeah, you just don't have as many decisions. Well, that's true. But the thing is, when you start showing up consistent, and I never understood that in my, as I was coming up, I thought creativity meant less consistency, like come up with something new all the time. But if people see you being consistent and acting consistently, it increases trust and it increases their trust in you, but it also increases your trust in yourself if you see yourself acting consistently. And so, just again, one little step, I took a bunch of decisions out of my life. I don't have to worry about do I wear the yellow shirt today or the white one? I don't have any of those. It's just I wear the t-shirt, then I put the jacket over it, and then I go where I need to go. And that is probably the least interesting, boring thing I do, uh, just to streamline my life.
Interesting, Mr. James. You emphasize that what you make boring should align with your values, not
Mm.
sometimes else. How do people even discover what is actually worth your creative attention versus what they have been told you should matter?
Oh, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because someone who's listening to us right now and they heard that James like made his wardrobe boring, they might really love to dress up and they might really love to uh, put their personality into their wardrobe. Well, that's not the kind of person who needs to make their wardrobe boring. Maybe that person loves to use their clothing to express themselves, but they don't really care about what they eat so much. So maybe make your diet boring or maybe make your routine pretty boring if you don't have a lot of people who are counting on you to get them to school or to walk them or whatever has to happen if it's a pet, then you can make your routine pretty consistent and boring as well, and that will lead to giving you more time later on, hopefully, if it's set up properly, to do the things you want to do. So if you are a foodie, don't make your diet boring. That would just take all the fun out of life. Be creative in that way. If you're a fashionista, go with the fashion, make something else boring. So, yeah, thank you for bringing that up because that's a really good clarification. But in terms of where to figure out where to put your creative energy, I think my best advice would be try a lot of different things. If you're not in a job that demands you be creative all the time and you're looking for a creative outlet, the best thing to do is to try a bunch of different stuff and you'll know pretty quick what sticks. And sometimes you'll find that that's something visual. You'll find maybe I don't enjoy going to see live bands, live music. I love music. I like to hear it over the speakers in my car. I don't want to be there around people. It's crowds. A drink is like $40. It's not fun for me. So we talking visual arts though, I'm there. I love it. Whereas other people are like, yeah, that seems boring. And I'm like, yeah, that's because we're different.
God created us differently. And you interviewed over 100 guests on your podcast. What is the most common regret you hear from people who leave someone else's script for too long?
Oh, that's an easy one because and it's also cliche. And I've found cliches are cliche for a reason because they are kind of a truth wrapped in something that makes you want to roll your eyes. And that's okay because so many people have very similar experiences, even though their circumstance is wildly different. And the one thing that a lot of folks have a sentiment is that they didn't start sooner. And whatever that means, they didn't start their rebellion sooner. They didn't leave a bad relationship sooner. They didn't start their business sooner. What happened right before they did whatever rebellion got them to our conversation? Right before that was a lot of fear and just wrestling with themselves, willingness to step into the unknown because what they did know was just not filling them up. And so that gave them the courage to step in a direction they couldn't really predict anymore. And the biggest regret they all say is that they wish they'd done it sooner.
Hope I did it sooner. So, to wrap up our discussion for today, Mr. James, if someone listening today feels the stirring of joyful rebellion but has no idea what the authentic story even looks like, what is the first small step?
Oh, the first small step. Well, I do actually on the website, joyfulrebellion.com. We have a book that's on there totally free, and it's called 7 Steps to Plotting Your Joyful Rebellion. And it goes through step by step on just some things to think about. It's a tactical guide for anyone who wants to consider, overthrowing their lack of joy.
Mm, certainly amazing, beautifully. Mr. James, so can you please invite our listeners to support your business, your advocacy, your podcast, your books, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Oh, definitely. Thank you. I have everything centralized on my website, which is jameswalters.com. And that will get you to seeing what we're doing over on the podcast. But it will also have updates of new books that are coming out. You'll be able to see the books that I currently have. One's called Meditations of the Mundane. That's the picture book. It's a coffee table book. And yeah, right now I'm deep into working on a documentary film. So I've got some behind the scenes from that in the blog section.
Well, people, let's support Mr. James because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering, well, business, books, podcasts will rise. So, Mr. James, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel.
Vertical people, see you soon.